Welcome to this week's Everyday Inclusion and Belonging, where we talk about everything diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging under the sun. It is Pride 2023. I am super excited to have my very favorite member of the LGBTQ plus community with us today. I am Mo Berkner-Boyd. I'm the founder of Moxie and the Everyday Inclusion app. I am a white woman with mid-length red hair. I threw some purple in it because life's short. I'm wearing red frames. I've got a bookshelf behind me, and I am wearing my Human Rights Campaign t-shirt that says y'all means all. I am joined by my daughter, Riley.
Sorry.
Introduce yourself, and then we're going to talk about everything about being a part of the queer community and what coworkers and workplaces can do to create inclusion.
Sorry, I got started a little early and I thought you were going to say I was your favorite child when you were hyping me up like that, but we can go.
I knew you were going to try for the favorite child thing. I'm not going there.
We can go with favorite LGBTQ member. That also works. Hi, I'm Riley Boyd. I'm a disabled queer marine scientist studying sharks. I'm also the founder and CEO of Disabilities Within Ocean Science. I am a redheaded white woman with dwarfism. I'm wearing a green shirt and have plants behind me. And a dog that may occasionally make an appearance.
Occasionally the dog walking through. So let's start with language. And I think this is really interesting because I've asked people about three different cisgender women from the LGBTQ plus community. And language is really interesting because of its power to include or exclude, and because of how personal it is. So you choose the word queer.
Yep. Yeah. So I
more, Riley.
No, I didn't know if you were gonna. There was more to what you were asking. Yeah, I use the word queer. Typically, I identify as bisexual or pansexual. Kind of depends on my mood. Definitely depends on the person I'm attracted to. But I use queer because it's a nice umbrella term, and it has a very beautiful but fraught history behind it. And so I think a lot of people within the LGBTQ community use queer because the labels that are there might not work for them, or a few of them might, so they use a nice umbrella term. And like you said, language can be very inclusive or very exclusive, and queer to me is very inclusive because it's a nice, huge umbrella term that all kinds of things can be under. I shouldn't say things, people and attractions and all the other wonderful things that are part of our community, but queer just fit right for me when I was starting to figure out who I was, which really didn't happen till college. there were some indicators probably should have known early on, but queer was kind of how I was introduced to my sexual orientation in the beginning, and so that's the word I've kind of stuck with since.
So when you think about your workplace experiences, I think one of the things, right, we always want people that are part of the everyday inclusion community to leave with ideas. What do you wish people would stop doing?
I kind of come from a very unique and privileged experience. I'm a white woman, but my queerness is never the first thing that is ever going to be known or oppressed or any of the things about me. Like the bias isn't going to come from my queer identity until much later when I know people. Like people could be like, oh, she's queer, and then I'm going to, and they have all their bias and their homophobia and their biphobia or whatever, and then I'm going to walk around the room and the ableism knocks that right out of the park, because that's what they're going to see first. Is they're going to see a disabled woman, they're going to see a dwarf, and so that kind of oversees the queer aspect. And it is duality. I do have multiple identities, but I think when it comes to workplace, it's always the disabled that people are going to be thinking of, and then the queer comes once I'm more in that space. And the thing I think especially in marine science, that we need to stop doing is saying that we have a safe space when we don't. Because so many people they're gonna have their DEI, like code of conduct, they're gonna have their statement out, they're gonna be like, we're a safe space. That's really cool. But if your field work is in a country that like trans people can get killed or LGBTQ can get criminalized, or you're in a state like the 400 plus laws, like anti-LGBT and trans laws that have been passed in the past months, like you can shout, I'm a safe space, we have a great culture, all you want. How are you actually implementing that safety? Because when it comes to being queer, it's not just the pushback you can get from your colleagues, your boss, academia, because when you are in marine science, you have to deal with academia more than you would ever like to. And I think that's where it starts to get exhausting because you're like, yeah, that's awesome, safe space, but I'm here in South Texas or whatever. It's not going to be a safe space for me to be out. And
oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was going to say, I think so many organizations don't think about that travel aspect.
Yeah.
Right? As a scientist, for you, it can be where am I doing research, or and where are you sending people to conferences?
Yeah.
Right. I think those are what are the expectations about even traveling to a different office within your company or a different location within your company? Right. Safety is a very real concern.
Oh, for sure. And like the corporate world and marine science are very different places, but the bathrooms are really, I feel like, classically good example, because you can make a safe space bathroom all you want and have them be unisex, anyone can use whatever. If you're on a boat and have to pee off the side and you haven't really told your colleagues how you identify as, or you've had pushback, you're not going to do that. It's very unsafe to do that. And I have so many colleagues, trans and gender nonconforming colleagues, that have gotten UTIs, that have suffered, that don't go on boats, don't pursue field research because of that danger. There was actually a wonderful podcast recently called the Nature Careers Podcast. It was published in Nature Journal. You don't need a subscription, which is wonderful, because usually scientific journals, you do need a subscription, but they did a how to deliver a safer research culture for LGBTQIA+ researchers, and they really went into the fieldwork aspect of it.
Great.
And you don't have to do fieldwork if you don't want to in marine science, but oftentimes in school you do, especially if you're a grad student, if you're a PhD, and they cover it so wonderfully. And yeah, you can have safe spaces. They're not actually going to be safe though. If there's pushback, if your colleague is biphobic, if your colleague makes comments, your boss can say it's a safe space. But if you aren't getting into certain journals, if you're not getting to collaborate, your ideas aren't getting pitched because of these biases, it's not a safe space. So it's one of those things that if you're gonna make a safe space, you actually have to make a safe space. It has to be implemented, and there needs to be consequences for people who don't make it a safe space. And I don't care if they're the highest earning partner or have tenure or whatever. Like, you need to actually make your spaces safe, because that's, I think, one of the most, like, microaggressions aside, it's just like, cool, thanks, I still can't come here. And then when you do get there, sure, it might be safe, like safety wise, health and living, but then you're dealing with all the microaggressions, so you're like, sweet, here's the other edge of the sword. Like, I'm back.
So we kind of buzzed by it, and I want to come back to it because I wanted to talk about intersectionality. Mm-hmm. Right, and identities, because you talked about some privilege that you have in terms of being white and cis, and then that the first thing you face isn't biphobia, right? Yeah. Or homophobia. It is, hey, oh my gosh, ableism right up in your grill. Yeah. I'm interested, and I know that you and I have had some conversations in the past, that because people see you as see your disability first, oftentimes you get a peek in the box at people's homophobia, transphobia, biphobia, because
yeah,
right. And I think that is something really interesting that when I've interviewed people that are either multiracial, biracial, they face that same thing where somebody might see them as white. And so there are these racial slurs happening and racial, and there, and so you get to see the good, the bad, the
Yeah.
ugly, because you also get to see people being good allies to the LGBTQ plus community. So I think that there's a plus and minus to that intersectionality for you.
For sure. And I think like I'm very obviously physically disabled, and I think it's similar to all those experiences for the people that are invisible disabilities because they're gonna be like, wow, this is why I haven't shared that I have chronic fatigue. Because everyone at the table is like, wow, so and so has a wheelchair, like they can't come to this like, they're saying all their ableist stuff, they're being awful, and they're like, wow, I'm never gonna share this. Cool, thanks. And so
Yeah.
I think there's always been that, but I also have been very lucky and very privileged that most of the places that I've worked, and again, I say most because not all, but most of the places I've worked have been in states or areas that are LGBTQ welcoming and are on the safer side. So that does help. Like my grad program I'm going into is a very welcoming and safe space. So I think there is also that where it was kind of easy for me to be like, oh, by the way, I'm also bi, versus like sussing it out where you're like, oh, like where are we here? But
I just want to
like
give I want to give a shout out to the Oregon Coast Aquarium.
yes, the Oregon Coast Aquarium, specifically Katrina Bettis. She is the volunteer program coordinator, manager. She's a superhero, is what she is, and she was the number one advocate every single time, the ally to, as she says, her alphabet mafia. She has another term, and I can't remember what it is, and it's just amazing. She was
So,
like the number one ally and continues to be, and does a bunch of amazing stuff. So the Oregon Coast Aquarium was a really wonderful place to work because of that.
and I wanted to bring that up, Rye, because there were some really specific things that she did and that they did that I think people can learn from. Right. Like I just saw last week, they hoisted the pride
Yep.
flag up with, and in some organizations, they're hoisting the pride flag and it's performative.
Yes.
Oregon Coast Aquarium and Katrina were all in allyship. Can you just share a couple things specifically that she and they did that folks could learn from? It doesn't matter if they're an aquarium or they are a construction company, right? If you're a leader, here are some things that Katrina did that were allyship in action.
Yeah, I think Katrina, we can always talk about how amazing she was. She was incredible, and I could boast about her all the time. I think so. They do the flag raising. The key to the marine bio world is a lot of us are queer. A lot of us are LGBTQ AI 2S plus. Like there are so many of us that are queer. So it's I wouldn't say it's a majority for sure. And we still don't know because I think there's like 40% that haven't come out. That was a study done back in 2018, I think. Don't actually quote me on that date. Earlier, so we don't actually, have full numbers, and there hasn't been enough research done. But the Oregon Coast Aquarium was really big. We made sure like pronoun pins were available. Didn't have to take them. That was very stressed. Pronouns and stuff. Anything that we do have a lot of older volunteers at the Oregon Coast Aquarium, and there was a very set boundary of you are going to honor the people around you. You are, and it was brought up, call-ins and call-outs were occurred. It was a very set, like you will honor people's identity and you will be welcoming because of it. And there was a very, like, you were held to that standard, and it continued. And our youth volunteers, especially, that was seen. Gen Z, as we know, is absolutely changing the workplace for 1,000 times the better. So I think there's a big acceptance coming from that wave. So kind of getting to work with that range of people, you're getting all those identities, which has been really amazing. And then we got a bunch of cute little rainbow shark pins, which were really exciting because that was the first pin that I got that was identifying me as queer in a marine biospace. Because my first time kind of flying under the radar as queer was one of my American Elasmobranch Society conferences, and everyone was wearing these queer ally pins. So it was the pride flag with the word ally. And a few of us didn't wear them because I'm not going to be an ally to my own community, I'm a part of my community. I'll be an ally to the trans community. I'll be an ally to the intersex community, the 2S community, because they're, although they are a part of the LGBTQ, that's a community that I'm not specifically a part of. And I remember so many people kind of coming up to me, and it either was like, you're not an ally, and like complete judgment, where I was like, you're correct, I'm not an ally. I myself am queer. Or they were like, I see you also didn't choose the pen. And I was like, oh, brother, not for the reason that you're thinking. Super uncomfortable that you came up to me to say that. We actually won't be chatting any longer. I know who to avoid at that awkward buffet they always have at conferences. Not you. Like, thanks. So I think there was just a few things, and it was kind of holding that standard. And it was a standard of listening at the aquarium as well. Like, it was checking in before doing any big pride actions. And a lot of the things, like the pride flag raising, was done by Trish Howe. Victoria, one of our mammalogists, wrote an incredibly wonderful article for last Pride from AZA, which is the Aquarium Zoos Association. There we go. I should know that. So if you go to their website and type in Pride, you'll see her article, and it's beautiful and kind of written about the culture of Newport and the culture of the aquarium. I will say it is an organization, so it does have its faults, and Newport is also slowly becoming a tourist town. It's a tourist town for a lot of people from red counties and states. So we are kind of starting to see that shift, but it was a prioritization and a cultivation, especially in the training of volunteers and staff. Like, it wasn't that single training. We're like, okay. And Katrina especially is pushing for more and more of that. So there is a very solid start and kind of cultural baseline.
So I heard a bunch in there, right? Like, just that, well, right, like, this is the expectation. Yeah. There was no gray area.
Yeah.
And you talked about seeing instances of people being called into the conversation, or called out if they needed to be. That there was a lot of listening to the community, right, before actions were taken, to make sure that they were actually appropriate. And that kind of a consistency, right? It wasn't, it hasn't been a one and done. I think all those, Raya, are really great things for people to take forward, because I think it's always about what's working, right? What are those things that are working, and how organizations can take and run with those. Is there anything that you wish people knew?
So many things, especially if you're on the news right now.
Yeah, again, like workplace context, right?
Workplace context. I think especially if you are making a product or you have a social media, that's really cool that your logo turned into a rainbow for only June. That's really cool that you sold rainbow themed things. Where's the money going to? What are you doing with that money? Are you actively supporting bills, laws, and people that are for the safety and health and happiness of LGBTQI, or is this capitalism? Because rainbow capitalism, rainbow washing, is doing so much more damage than, I shouldn't say so much more damage. It's doing damage to our community and to us actively getting to a place of equality and inclusion. So if you are an organization, you can't just do those things. Like, you have to do actionable items. You have to be doing DEAI trainings. You have to be constantly educating yourself and the people around you. And you need to be making sure that anything that you're benefiting from using the rainbow or using LGBTI isn't going to your company. Unless you're LGBTQ owned, unless your product is for LGBTQ people, it needs to be going to the community, or it needs to be going to things to help the community. Because otherwise, that's just capitalism, rainbow washing. And that's it's one of the most annoying things. Do I have a few rainbow items around my house? Absolutely. But you need to be making sure that it's going to our community, especially the BIPOC part of our community, the disabled part of our community, the trans part of our community, like the youths of our community that are facing most of these laws. Like, those products need to be going towards them.
And I think it's interesting. there's a saying in the DEI community, food, flags, and fun. Right. So if you're stopping at food, flags, and fun, you are a part of the problem.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. If you're not looking at your internal policies and procedures, if you're not looking at the external politics and being involved and using your corporate voice or your company voice, because I think it's interesting. Not interesting isn't even the right word, right? Like 70% plus of people are against all of these anti-LGBTQ plus, right? So we're letting a vocal minority,
Yep.
and so it's, and corporations, companies have power.
Oh, they have so much power. Like the I think great examples, Bud Light. We all saw all the stuff that just went down with Bud Light. And it cracks me up because it wasn't until they chose a trans person that everyone was like, oh, Bud Light supports gay people. They've been supporting gay people. They have. They've been doing rainbow stuff. They've been supporting them behind the scenes. I'm glad they're finally supporting them in front of the scenes, but they've been donating. They've been doing all these things. So we need to make it where it's not just the, woohoo, we did our thing, get involved. And if you are afraid of rocking the boat, then you are doing damage. Like if you are like, but we have these people that believe these things. We have these conservatives. We have these religious people. We want to make sure you're not being inclusive.
You know what I think?
You should be making those people mad with your actions.
Well, I think there's a piece right now that I say this broken record-ish, that comfort is a privilege.
Yes.
To stay comfortable, to stay, and when you think of what is at stake, literally lives.
Yeah. Like young kids, like if we're ignoring the adults right now, which we shouldn't because we're a whole community, but if like kids are being attacked right now, and if your company isn't supporting helping them, then you're part of the attack. Even if you're neutral, you're not neutral.
Right. They're truly right. There is no neutral.
there is no neutral. Like kids are going to die, and kids are going to die by suicide. They're going to die because their access to care. And if your company is near the thick of it, then you need to be in the thick of it. You need to be supporting those people. You need to be supporting the adults that are in your thing. And especially like if you are a company and you are being neutral or you are supporting both sides, the parents of those trans kids are seeing that. The trans people that are not out to you and the LGBT people that are not out to you within your company are seeing that. And you are ensuring that they will never have a safe space, they will never feel comfortable, and they will never be open about their identity. And you will continue that cycle because unfortunately for you, you can make every single law you would ever like to do banning us. We're still going to exist. Like every act, everything that you could ever do is not going to eradicate us. Like we're going to still be here. So you can do that and choose to kind of be on that side of, I don't want to sound like a hero movie, but evil. Or you can actually choose to support people. And especially right now in June, if your social media has that little rainbow on it, I want action. I want to see some action and some help.
Yeah, right. And show us the receipts.
Show us the receipts. Don't just say or only donate to the Trevor Project when it's the month of June. It needs to be 365 days of the year, all the time, supporting everyone. Like let's see it happen.
I wonder, let's take it back down to kind of a micro level. Is there anything in particular that coworkers can do? Because we talked about kind of organization, excuse me, and we talked about really good leadership. What about coworkers?
Don't out your coworkers. That's not even like, unless they have told you, don't do it. Like it's not your job. And if they, I think pronouns are a great example. There are some people who will share their true pronouns with you and they will ask that you use that name and those pronouns. And if they ask others in a way to keep safe to use different pronouns and names, that's not your right to out them. It's not like, hey, they prefer, like, honor what they would like. Check in with your coworkers. Don't just check in with them in the month of June. Please don't come up to me in the month of June and be like, hey, so you're queer. How's that going for you? Like, how can I support you? Like, what? No, go away. And I think I'm so lucky with the lab that I am in. It was very like front and center. It was one of the things I needed to know that it was a safe space. And when I came out, it was like, okay, how can we support you? Like, sweet, thank you for telling us this fact about yourself. Can you still work with sharks? Like, and I think making sure that that is a standard. And if you hear shit, speak up. Because even if your coworker's not in the room and you're uncomfortable because it's your boss, speak up. Because the pushback on you is not going to be anything compared to the pushback that your queer coworker is facing. So if you are like, hey, whoa, what you said is not appropriate. What you said about this person is not appropriate. You're not giving them this project because of this, or calling out and be like, hey, you keep passing this person. Is it because you're homophobic? Call it out. It should not, and that's obviously if they're out to the office and out to the people around them. Don't call it out if it's not, if they're not out or in the closet. It's not our job, or for questioning people. But be an ally. Don't just say you're an ally. And I think the big thing is to stop guessing. Like, to stop if your coworker's questioning, or your coworker is like, stop guessing and judging based on that, like, unless they tell you. The star from Abbott Elementary, Tyler, oh gosh, I'm gonna forget his name now that I brought it up, just summarized it so beautifully about kind of being a good ally and supporting queer and questioning people. And I think if you haven't seen it, definitely go. It's all over the news right now, so it won't be hard to miss. But he really sums it up in a really beautiful way. And now it's gonna bug me that I can't think of his name.
I knew you were going to look it up.
I know, I'm obsessed with the show.
Real
Like,
time. And then as you're looking it up, share where folks can find that.
yes, Tyler James Williams. If you look up his name, it's in the news right now. He posted on his Instagram, I believe, as well. But he summed it up beautifully. He's an ally. And I really liked how he said it. If you're a scientist or want to support scientists, 500 queer scientists, go, run, look at their site, fund them, send them money. If you're a scientist, sign up to be a part of them, help back their studies, do all those things. Like, let's go. But yeah, those are kind of the two summaries recently that I've really, really liked.
Are there any other resources, right? You mentioned Trevor Project. I'm wearing my Human Rights Campaign t-shirt.
There's so many good resources out there. Like, if you
are queer scientists, if you're in science.
Yeah, like if you Google, there are thousands of beautiful resources out there. Especially if you yourself are queer, questioning, trans, two-spirit, any of those things, LGBTQ, like, please go find some resources. There are so many wonderful things out there. 500 Queer Scientists, I'm just gonna keep posting about them, has job boards. They have all kinds of really cool resources. A lot of DEAI, like normal organizations, are going to have connections. So if you are struggling within your industry to find a connection, to find a mentor, contact someone that's doing that work and actually doing that work, not just saying they're doing that work. And they'll have someone to connect you with. They'll have resources, guides, people to kind of put you in contact. And I've had people come to me from the disabled community through other organizations because they were like, I don't know where to go. So I think rely on your contacts as well in a safe manner. Make sure you're safe while you're doing that and that you'll stay safe. But rely on your contacts and kind of get those resources as well.
What else?
I feel like we covered a pretty nice range.
I was about to use your full name like a mother.
Yeah, and again, like I am a white cis woman, so please go talk to people and support people within the community that are BIPOC and trans and gender non-conforming, intersex, two-spirit, all the things. Like, make sure your pride and your pride education isn't just from exactly the one person that kind of matches what you look like. And if you're hosting pride events, make them accessible. Stop leaving us out of it, because pride is not accessible, like, at all. Like, get together.
Yeah.
If you're hosting events, it had better be accessible to me. I actually went to my first accessible pride event last 3 nights ago. And everyone was wearing masks. They had earplugs. They had sections to go if you were needing to sit down. There were seats aplenty. And I saw so many disabled people. It was so unexpected. And just running into them, I was like, okay, this place is like, if I'm running into people that have canes and are deaf and signing and in chairs and very obviously disabled or neurodivergent and have a safe space, as I'm walking through the door, I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna hang out and have fun. So make sure your pride is not forgetting the other communities that make up the LGBTQ plus community. Like, come on.
When we're talking about marginalized, right? Making sure that everybody that is marginalized can get in the door, because you saw so many people from the disability community there because it was an accessible event.
Because it was an accessible event.
It didn't exist, right? So I think that is also a good litmus test, y'all. If you are looking around the room and you're not seeing people from the disability community, red flag, what needs to happen next year to make the event accessible?
Yeah, if everyone looks like you at your event, unless it's an all disabled event and everyone looks disabled or has a disability, or like you're at a BIPOC event, but if everyone's looking like you at your pride event, that's not pride. That's exclusionary.
I think that this is hilarious as we're talking about looking like each other in this conversation.
Yes, you and I, well, maybe.
It doesn't get much more than this.
But yeah, if you're having an event, a parade, and you're looking around and you are missing major communities,
right. If you're looking around at everybody,
about that.
If everybody is white, if everybody is non-disabled, if everybody,
which, if you haven't looked up the history of the Stonewall riots and then the pride parades after that, then you need to go watch Sylvia Rivera's speech. I think it's still so applicable today because pride is often very white, straight, cis, able-bodied. And it's like, oh, this is our space. And it's like, that's not your space at all, actually. You're excluding most of the people from your community. And she will sum it up better than I ever could. So do your work as well. If people use certain terms to describe themselves, those are their terms. So make sure your pride and everything you do, even not in the month of June, is accessible and inclusionary. Like, it's, I don't want to say it's simple because making space accessible isn't, but it's simple. Do it or don't hold the event.
Mic drop.
Done. Like, don't talk to me about you don't have the funds. If you don't have the funds, then you shouldn't be running the event in the first place.
Nice.
Yeah, that will be my closing statement. Thanks. Bye.
So I always ask for one last truth bomb.
I think that was the truth.
I do too. I was like, she just dropped the mic.
Done.
And then just for a bit of lighthearted to wrap it up, one of the things that you and I have been doing is we've been reading YA queer romance.
Okay, it hasn't, first of all, it has not just been YA. It's been primarily YA.
Yeah, here's what I would encourage everybody to do. Even just think about the books that you're reading, the TV shows that you're watching, the movies that you're watching, because you and I have gotten so much joy. Like we will on the sly drop in a line from Red, White, and Royal Blue, right?
Yes.
uh,
Or Honey Girl, all if y'all haven't read Honey
the
Girl.
list, yeah, list just a couple of your favorites. So
Oh, I have so many that are amazing. Looking at my bookshelf right now, Freya Marseke, there's obviously Casey McQuiston, Honey Girl by Morgan.
we can post it. Cemetery.
Yeah, Honey Girl, there's so much. The list is endless.
Cemetery.
Cemetery Boys, Aiden Thomas.
Cemetery Boys.
They are incredible. Latinx author. Like the books are amazing. I haven't read the Sunbearer Trials. No one come after me for that. Iron Widow, like the list goes on and on. But I will say, consume all queer media, but make sure the queer media you're consuming is not just trauma. If your queer character dies in the end, is miserable, is outed, is unhappy, I'm not saying you can't watch those things, because please do, especially documentaries, like know our history, but watch some joy, watch some fluff, watch some queer happiness.
Right.
Go watch The Ultimatum. It's a queer reality TV show. Like go support us, please. Like don't just support the tragedies that our community faces. Like uplift our joy too. During Pride Month, I always make sure to start like my day with just queer joy. So whether that's a book or just very silly videos, which queer humor is right below disabled humor on being top tier, dark, amazing humor. But like go encourage queer happiness, support queer happiness. Like don't.
Yep.
If you're writing it, stop killing off the queer characters. Stop making them the evil villains. Like queer joy, please. We need it, especially right now.
So that's a second mic drop, right? Like joy is resistance too.
Oh, for sure.
So
go read a happy book.
All right. Well, I knew that I was going to love this conversation. And I super appreciate everything that you shared. And I am super proud to be your mama. So happy Pride. And y'all will put some of those resources in the chat. And Riley, go be your queer, brilliant self.
Will do.
Bye, y'all. See you next